Your anxiety has a language, and once you learn to speak it, everything changes. Now, today on this episode of Creatives Rule the World, I interview my friend Annamarie Green, who is going to talk about the 5 anxiety types. She unwraps how generational trauma and childhood trauma affect us today, and why traditional therapy is actually destroying humanity. That's my words, not hers. And how to move through really serious situations in just a few sessions. Now, you're going to be fascinated by this conversation. I know I was. So buckle up. Let's dive right in. Welcome back to Creatives Rule the World. Hey there, I'm Tracy Matthews, your host. I am fighting the war against creative people because let's face it, in a world of AI, and I am all about AI because I am an AI innovator. In a world of AI, we are losing something with humanity. And I am here to help founders build human first brands and using AI as a complement of that as one of the tools. Now, in this episode, my guest, Annamarie, is a licensed psychotherapist and intuitive healer who has helped hundreds of people become completely symptom-free in 12 weeks or less. Now, that's a bold claim, and she backs it up, and she is the real deal. We talked about why traditional therapy takes so long. Now, ancestral trauma is literally sitting in your body right now. And the 5 survival strategies driving anxiety without you even knowing it. My guest today is Annamarie Green. She's a licensed psychotherapist and an intuitive healer. And she is someone who is like magic. You know why? Because she can get her clients symptom-free in 12 weeks or less, where traditional therapy can sometimes take years. No joke. I've seen it happen. She is the real deal. We talk about the different anxiety types. We talk about how ancestral trauma is still living in your body right now and how to clear it really quickly. So I don't want to spill the beans. Let's dive right into this episode. You are going to love it. Well, I'm so excited to have my friend Annamarie Green on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So I met Annamarie at the Expanders Retreat. Actually, I met you at Powerhouse Women last year.
Okay.
We randomly met, and I remember talking to you because you are such a striking, you have such a striking presence. It's hard to forget who you
I
are.
have big hair, I'm tall. That's fair.
Very tall, yes. So I remember that, but we got to know each other a little bit more at Powerhouse Expanders, excuse me. Get them all confused because we're here at the Powerhouse Women weekend, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to have you on the show today because you have such a unique way of supporting people in their lives.
Yeah.
And before we dive in, why don't you share a little bit more about your background and how you got into healing humans. Healing humans.
I'll try to sum it up because it's such a long journey.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. So I am an intuitive therapist, for those listening, which means I combine psychotherapy and clinical practices with energy healing and energy reading, and I've created my own intuitive therapy method. I've been doing this for the last 2.5 years, but I've been a therapist since 2020. I have my LCSW, and then I started learning energetic work and intuitive work probably in like 2021. It was after I had lost my partner and I was not recovering from the grief, from the stress of everything. I was not able to be fully present for my daughter. And my friend kind of introduced me to it. And once I learned and I saw how it helped me, I went down the rabbit hole, as so often many of us do when we learn something that works. And that's essentially how, long story short, of how I got here to this moment.
Well, I think it's so amazing because I remember when I talked to you the first time and you were explaining what you do, you're like, intuition, energy work, traditional therapy, all these modalities and blending them together, you can get people results like really, really fast.
Yes. Yeah. So the intuitive therapy method gets people results. I can get anyone symptom free in 12 weeks or less, which is a very bold statement, but the work that I do it's just effective. I've seen it in over 300 people, and I spent a lot of time developing the protocol, the methodology, using the best practices from both industries. And so that's why I can say such a confident thing. And I've seen clients have complete recovery after just one session.
Wow.
And so which is a really big deal. I have one of my clients she was one of my earlier ones that when I was just testing things out, I remember we did the healing and she was like, I feel euphoric like I've never felt before, and it carried with her for months afterwards. And she stopped having back pain because I removed an ancestral wound from her back. So it hits every single level of development, and it's really cool to see what people feel they have the freedom to do after.
So we're going to backtrack a little bit.
Yes, yeah, of course.
What did you see were the problems in traditional therapy?
So I saw that it was taking people years to get an inch towards the goal that they had. And most of the time people come to therapy because they're like, something is drastically not working. They don't usually come to therapy because they're like, you know what?
Things are great.
Yeah, things are great. I just think I'm going to do a little preventative. They're like, please help me. So do something. I'm kind of at my wit's end. And they feel like everything around them is crashing down. And so what I saw was a lot of clients had been in therapy for 5, 10 plus years with very little results, in addition to my own journey where I had been in therapy for a year with no results. I was in therapy twice a week. I had tried CBT, I had tried EMDR. EMDR helped a little bit, but I was still having these flashbacks. I was still crying every single night in the shower. I was not able to be fully present with my daughter. And I knew that there had to be something that we were missing. I knew that there had to be something that as practitioners, we have to ask, like, what else can we do? Because in no other industry would it be acceptable for you to be doing something for multiple years with yielding no results. And so that's kind of, I started to question things, and I really let my anger and frustration with my own journey lead me to challenge the system. In addition to, a lot of times, according to the American Psychology Association, 1 in 5 people are in therapy now, 1 in 5 adults. But it takes about 10 months for somebody to experience a breakthrough of weekly sessions. So if you're not going weekly for at least 10 months, the likelihood of you experiencing a breakthrough is very little. And even then, it's only 60% of people are experiencing a breakthrough at that point in time. And that, to me, was an unacceptable statistic.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
1000%. And I know Jason, who's in the room with us, would also agree, because he does similar type of work with people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, I was in therapy after I got divorced, and the thing I eventually wanted to quit because I was like, he just would ask the same questions every week. And I didn't feel like we were really getting anywhere. I mean, the 2 amazing things that came out of therapy for me were this. Number 1, I found out that I was dyslexic. I didn't realize it.
Oh my gosh.
Because he asked me the right question during that time. He's like, do you think you're dyslexic? And I was like, maybe, because half my family is, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like it really shifted the way that I was showing up. But at a certain point, I was kind of like, I don't really need to come to be asked the same questions every single week and not making any progress. Yeah. And I would feel frustrated.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times people feel like, oh, well, then something must be wrong with me because I'm doing this thing and yet nothing's changing, and they hear that it's supposed to change. So then they just think this is the way it's supposed to be. But the actual problem is that with therapy, although it is great, I will never say, like, don't go to therapy, but it exists on a cognitive level. And with it being on the cognitive level, it's like trying to push a boulder uphill. The mind is not going to change, and your thoughts and behaviors aren't going to change if your body doesn't feel safe and energetically you're carrying all this stuff. And so that's really what the issue of why therapy doesn't work for a lot of people is they're trying to think their way or intellectualize their way into a regulated nervous system. But over intellectualization actually can cause us to disassociate more. So instead of being able to enjoy our life, we're like, oh my gosh, am I being this way? Or is this a sign that my anxiety is going to come back? So I find that it's a lot more effective to approach things from the energetic level and then work your way up to the cognitive.
It's interesting. The second thing that I was going to say was that I found out that I use humor to avoid dealing with my feelings and emotion, or start laughing. It's like it's a interesting coping mechanism for a 7 on the Enneagram. But also I would find that I would dissociate in those sessions because I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. And I couldn't get back into my body. Yeah. So how, a lot of people are experiencing, we have a friend who is, former Army Ranger who we've worked with in different healing settings and stuff like that, because we've done a lot of healing work, but somatic work and psychedelic work and different things to help unravel the complex PTSD. And I remember him sitting in a session one day and talking about these people with complex PTSD, especially our veterans, right? Talking about how after unraveling these things, he was able to just release years of having the same dream over and over every single night, and being able to have compassion and love for these people over time. It's it's significant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was suicidal before he started doing more somatic work and healing work. So How do you think that energy work, healing work, in the case that I'm talking about was like psychedelic supported. How do you think that helps speed up the healing of PTSD?
Yeah. So with PTSD in particular, it helps shut off and really any type of medical assisted treatment like that. It's helping to shut off the ego, the part of the brain that's like overthinking, so that whatever is actually stored within your body and your energy, and then by proxy your mind, it is all coming up and you can actually let yourself process it. It can be very, very intense. That's why it has to be done with a professional, because your body is going to be processing these things out, and the body processes trauma in different ways. So that's even one of the reasons why like holotropic breath work is something that is really, really effective for if you or somebody who's experienced a lot of trauma, because the body will shake and stuff during the session, and that's all different ways the body's like releasing it. In addition to when you're not trying to intellectualize something, it allows the part of the brain to open up that is actually in charge of all of the behaviors. So the subconscious and things like that. So when you are using something like the psychedelics, it's just opening your mind up and shutting different parts of your brain down that usually keep everything under lock and key, because it's focused on keeping you safe. And instead you can be very much held and present in the moment, and it allows you to have those intense releases.
Yes, it's so true.
Yeah.
Now, you talked a lot about getting stuck in your head, which I think is a huge problem for a lot of people. What are some of the ways that you help people release? I mean, I know you're working with their energy, but is there something specific or a specific recommendation you would give to people who are overthinkers? They obsess. Like I have a family member who is very, very anxious, and she uses, substance to try and like sedate her feelings. But I get it, because if you don't have the tools, your mind is telling you all these stories and it's a loop and you can't get out of it. So how do you work with someone who's like really stuck in that loop?
Yeah. So a lot of times when someone's stuck in a loop like that, what happens is they have so much energy from other people attached to their bodies. Their energy doesn't feel safe to ground. So the reason they're in their head all of the time is they've detached from the rest of it. And most likely somebody has crossed a boundary in their life before, especially with their physical body. And so it's easier to stay up here where they don't have to feel things and they don't have to necessarily move forward, than kind of sinking into the body and letting themselves process whatever needs to be processed. Energetically, this would look like me moving things off of them. Could be a cord cutting, but for a lot of people who, especially if they're using substances, most likely they have energetic attachments that make the body almost feel unbearable to sit in anyway. So that's usually something that I'll do, but a practice that people can do at home. I would recommend the first thing that you want to do always is to establish what does a yes and a no feel like in your body. So if you're somebody who's in your head, you want to try to figure out what does yes feel like, what does no feel like, what does my body feel like sensation wise. It's going to help you start to slowly start to reconnect some of those processes. And so that way it's not all on the mind. When you're in your mind all the time, you are trying to intellectualize. And the thing about intellect and that kind of thing is that it's all learned. So you're getting it from stories outside of yourself. It's not coming from within. So it's not going to align you with the thing that's going to make you actually feel peace. It's just going to keep you on this loop of like, I have to now keep doing this and nothing is ever enough.
Yeah. Those stories are so hard to unravel.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
How do you see programming affecting I'm saying programming, but just because when I say programming, what I mean is the stories that we tell ourselves, or our learned experience, or the things that we make meaning from, right? In our experience in our life. Can you give me an example of someone who like really unraveled a story and had like a huge transformation? Yeah.
Okay. So I was just working with a client the other day, and she had this belief that she was never going to find a partner, and that she was always going to be alone because she was too much, because she just wasn't good in relationship.
Right.
And we talked about, I let her like lead the session a little bit, and we talked about that, and I gave her what was actually coming through, because it wasn't that she is not a good partner. It was none of those things. It was actually that she watched her parents and her mom lose herself in her relationship with her parent, and then her dad still left, even though her mom gave up everything, every part of her identity, and to be in this relationship and to make it work. And so we had to go in energetically though for her to unlock that, because on the surface it's, oh, well, the partners out there are just not like dateable, and I also work all the time, or I'm just fine by myself. There were all these surface level things. So when we explored it, her mom's energy showed up, and she was holding so much of her mom's energy, in particular on the front of her chest all the way down through like the beginning of the hips.
Wow.
Which also means that all of that trauma that her mom experienced and didn't process out was sitting on her own body, and it was feeding the mind this information for this narrative. So part of the reason why we have these programmings, as you called it, is because our mind is just a translator. It's taking the information from our body, like the sensations and the things that are sitting on our body, and the raw energy, and it's creating narratives, beliefs, and stories so that it can easily be transferable. It's kind of like the connection piece.
Right.
And so if you're corded to a bunch of your mom's trauma, and then your body also remembers what it was like to watch your parents fight, your narrative isn't going to change. No matter how many affirmations you say, no matter how many times you talk about it in therapy, you have to change it at those other two levels, and then the mind will change. The mind will change like that.
Okay, so this is what you would consider ancestral trauma?
Yes, that. Yes.
Okay.
In particular, yes. Yes.
So do you want to explain what that is? Because I think there's a lot of different definitions of what ancestral trauma is,
Yeah.
and how we carry that forward.
Yeah.
In our bodies and in our belief systems.
Yeah. So ancestral trauma to me is any type of like really intense emotion or experience that somebody before you in your lineage had, and then they never worked through it. They never processed it. And as a response to it, they lived out of a state of survival, and they passed that down. Survival strategies, fears, those are all things that are passed down. We see it on a scientific level where they've, I forget which research study this was, but it was in an article I read, and they were experimenting on mice, and they traumatized essentially a grandparent generation, and 9 generations down, they still had the same survival response. They still reacted to stimuli in the same exact way, even though they had no experience with that thing that their grandparents or the 9 generations back experienced. It's the same, if not more intense for humans. And so we really want to think about where, and you might not know this answer, but like where your parents limited themselves and what they believed, and how the actions that they took and the life that they built, was it out of a place of fear? Because if it was, you're used to that, to existing in that energy.
Right.
And that is something that our bodies get very used to, the energy that we were raised in, to the point where something that is different can feel excruciating before it feels good.
Yeah, it's interesting. How do you bring people to the awareness of that's what's happening?
Yeah. I mean, normally if it's just a client who's coming in, I'm very, very honest and upfront, because most of the time people who book with me know what they're going to get into a little bit. But if it's somebody who is not in this world, and it's like
they're not woo.
Yes, yeah. They're not woo, and they haven't really like heard of my work before, a lot of times what I will do is I'll ask specific questions. And this is actually how the method kind of in the early stages began.
Let's hear
to
about
be
it.
born. Yeah. So when I was just a therapist, I was just doing traditional clinical work before this, I would get nudges to ask specific questions. A client would say something like, oh, well, I just never make any money, and that's one of the reasons I'm stressed. And that's just like an example. And when I'm sitting there listening to them and I'm asking the traditional questions that we're supposed to ask as therapists, I also get a nudge to ask about, what was it like for mom? What was mom's experience with working? What did she give up? And hearing that, and that helped them make so many more strides forward than if we were just to ask, well, how does this make you feel? And tell me about your experience. Asking those specific questions. And that was my intuition speaking and taking in the information without me consciously knowing it yet. But it helped me to start to see how all the ancestral trauma is interwoven, and also how deeply energy impacts us. So one of the big things I saw with people who have been anxious their whole lives, their parents were anxious, or their parents were living in a place of distress. And so their little bodies, when they were younger, are naturally corded to our parents, and so would digest that information and learn that you have to be anxious, that there's a constant threat around you. And then over time, your body forgets what it feels like to be in a state of peace. And so that's the new normal. So then they're going and they're living out of their survival strategies like their parents did, until it gets to a point where they're overwhelmed and it's debilitating. And that's usually when people come to therapy. Yeah. So
Darn it. Those attachment styles.
Yes. Yeah, literally.
It's so funny. Like, how do you know, like, if one parent has one and one parent has the other, you know?
Yeah. Attachment styles are like...
Well, I think of anxiety as an attachment style in a way, because you're programmed to kind of like operate in a specific way.
Yeah.
So when you're in stress, you know, or whatever, you get anxious, versus other people who get stressed, they become avoidant, or other people who they're unpredictable, they're disorganized, or something along those lines.
Yeah. Anxiety, when I was a couple years ago, I created something called the anxiety languages. And it's essentially a way to get a better understanding of what is at the root of your anxiety, because anxiety speaks through behaviors.
Right.
A lot of times people think it's just like, oh, it's when I feel like my thoughts are racing or I'm having a panic attack. It actually starts a lot earlier. As an example, you, as a kid, maybe you went to school and you wore like a purple zebra print cowboy hat, and kids made fun of you. And so then you chose to never wear it again.
Right.
That is creating a survival strategy. So you stopped being your authentic self to fit in, to survive the environment. And a lot of times with anxiety, why it shows up is that it's essentially the pieces of our soul are so important, and who we are on a soul level is so important to this world, that anxiety is a self-preservation mechanism. So it's kind of like saying, okay, you experience this hard thing, but that piece of your soul, that authenticity is so important. We're going to step forward and protect it through this survival behavior. When you have the time and space and also in ability, you can come back and process this out. But what happens is that we get stuck in living in those same ways. So that same person who never decided to wear the purple zebra print hat again now probably looks outside of themselves to determine what they should be doing and determine how they should be expressing themselves. And they think about other people a lot, or they want to know what other people are doing all the time. So it's these little behaviors like this person in this example probably feels better when they can like gossip or know what people are saying all the time. We'll talk about other people, or like want to know about other people, because that's how they establish safety and figure out how they need to behave. And it started at that original behavior.
So I've never heard it described like this before, because Jason says to me, like, we were working through something and he said, you're looking to other people to identify if you're okay or not. And he's like, it's a coping strategy, Tracy, but it's not actually, you need to check in with yourself. To see if you're okay.
Yeah. So
is that similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah. So it's there's in what I created, there's 5 anxiety languages, and each one has kind of...
What are they? Tell us.
So they're martyr, controller, pleaser, number, and overachiever.
Okay.
And I'll go through each of them. So with martyr, this individual most likely, or not most likely, but their survival strategy is to never have boundaries and always say yes to everything and overcommit to things, not because they are super, super ambitious, they might be, but more so because they feel that they have to. The core fear, and where you want to start working in therapy or with your coach, if this is you, is the fear that I'm a bad person and I'm not lovable. So a lot of times it roots back to experiences in childhood where they experienced corporal punishment. And the only way our brains can process that when we're children is, oh, I'm being bad, I must be bad. And so they learned early on, if I can serve other people, or I can show up and I can make their lives better, I will be safe. And so it creates this kind of a little bit of an obsession with being of service to other people. A lot of times these individuals will invalidate their own experience by saying something like, I should just be happy because somebody has it worse. Or so they'll compare other people's suffering to their own to kind of shame themselves.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that one is, I see it a lot of times, especially with moms and with women, where there's a lot of shame in that one. So, and then the next one that I'll go over is overachiever. So overachiever, I'm sure so many people
can you have more than one?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Normally you have 2 primary, but you can have more than one. And everyone has a little bit of everything, in my opinion, but you'll usually have one that sticks out more than the other.
I'm laughing because Jason's back here. He just raised his hand.
Yes. Okay.
Overachiever.
So overachiever. This core fear is that if you are not accomplishing things, if you are not performing,
I feel this one,
then your needs are not going to be met. And this one usually comes from individuals who early on, their parents paid attention to them only when they achieved something, or people didn't.
Don't make me cry.
Yeah. And some of the behaviors you'll see is like these individuals love long-term, like love being like, okay, in 5 years, I have this 5-year plan. They have really ambitious goals. They have really big goals, and they feel safe in setting goals. So like goal setting, achieving.
Did you hear that, Jason?
Is something that they love because it keeps them safe, and they're very future oriented. So instead of looking at the past, they're constantly obsessing over the future. Yeah. But then when they get to that goal, it doesn't quite feel the way that they thought it was going to. So they'll pick another one, and they usually will say, I'll be happy when, or I'll rest when. So it's always putting things off because they're focused on working or achievement. They tend to be workaholics, and they really, really struggle with
receiving.
Why
are you yelling at me?
It's also mine, so I can relate. And they also really struggle with receiving. Even though they want all these really big things, when it comes to receiving it, it feels excruciating unless they have overworked for it.
How do you break that one? Because that's a hard one.
Yeah, it is a hard one. So on an energetic level, it's a lot of like heart-spaced energy healing. So like when I see the anxiety languages when I'm doing readings as colors. So for overachiever, it's very green. It's impacting our heart space, our chest, but also it impacts like how we see the world. And so I'll do healings there, but it's also going back to that original place where you learned this and processing it out, and then going through the more recent ones too as well, and letting the emotions come up and be processed, talking to that younger version of yourself, and also letting them know they don't have to carry it anymore. They don't have to do this. So there's a couple different things. And in addition to, I always recommend breath work. If you're like, I really can't break this, do a 40 to 50 minute breath work journey, and most of the time you're going to be feeling pretty good on the other end of it. But then it's just a matter of really being able to identify as well, like, okay, I know that this is a survival strategy, because once you know, you can use your anxiety behaviors to pivot. So if I am an overachiever and I notice that I am overbooking myself and I'm keeping myself busy, I'm keeping my calendar packed, I know that there's something in my environment, either in my relationships or the work environment or something, that's making me feel unsafe on a physical, soul, or emotional level. Okay. And so that's my calling to go inward a little bit, see what it is, and make the necessary pivots. So when you use it like this, you can stay aligned on your path instead of, okay, I have to go all the way backwards. Once it gets debilitating, you can say, okay, I know something's off. It's not making me feel safe. So let me pivot, and I'm able to stay aligned with my soul's highest path. Yeah. It's really, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, yes. Keep going.
Okay.
Let's hear the rest.
Okay. So pleaser anxiety
I just
language.
feel so seen right now.
I know that the anxiety languages are like people, that's always usually their first little bite of like my work. And they're just like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen, and I love it. So pleaser is what most people think that they have, but that's like varies. I actually feel like most people have overachiever or like martyr, but pleaser, it impacts the sacral for looking at chakras and energy work. And the root of this one, or the root fear of this one, is that they're going to be abandoned. So they fear abandonment. So what happens is that the survival strategy they learned is, if I can mirror what people want, or if I can mirror who they are, people won't ever abandon me because they don't actually know who I am. Like there's no abandonment that will actually happen. So these individuals, some of the behaviors you might see is you love learning about like celebrities and gossip, or you love hearing other people's stories. You want to know what other people are doing. Yeah, these are like, it can be very, very subtle behaviors, but they're still survival strategies, because when it's on other people, then they're less likely to notice you or abandon you. And you also, these individuals really want to learn what other people value, what's important to others, so they can make themselves into that. You might think that you're an introvert, but it's probably actually that it's really hard to mirror more than one person at once. So groups are hard, but you do better at one-on-ones. And these individuals in the most like extreme, or kind of, I don't like to say like lower frequency, but just the extreme sides of it is where we might see difficulty with friendships, because these individuals also usually feel very alone. Even if they have lots of friends, they feel like nobody ever really knows them. And that's because they've spent so much of their time and energy mirroring what they think other people want. And so they tend to struggle with loneliness. They tend to struggle with unstable relationships.
You know what's interesting? I have a friend, she doesn't have unstable relationships, but
as you were talking, you have a conversation with her and she will literally always turn it back on you and keep asking. I'm like, but wait, I want to hear about you. And then she's like, no, but I want to.
Yeah.
Like it's all, I feel like I'm talking the whole time. I'm kind of like, we didn't even talk about you. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then it's just like a few quick things, but like, no, I really want more. Like, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah. So there's so many different ways it can be expressed, but that's one of them.
Like when you started talking about this, like this one friend that I've had for many, many years, immediately popped into my mind because I don't see her very often anymore. But every time I do, it's always about her asking me all the questions. And I feel like I don't even know what's going on with her.
Yeah. And that's just a protection mechanism. And most likely she doesn't let anything like get that close to her because, and with a lot of times with these individuals, they also don't really know fully who they are because they've spent so much time just in other people's energy trying to become something else. So even if they wanted to have deeper relationships, it feels really hard and overwhelming for them. There are people who also feel like they're constantly chasing their purpose. Like they might try something and then they're like, oh, I don't think that was it.
Okay.
And it's just very, it's because they have spent so much time disassociating from that version of them that was abandoned.
Interesting. So this is different than people with abandonment issues.
Yeah, they're similar, but I would say, so people with abandonment issues a lot of times know, and they can they're like, this moment, like when my dad left, I felt abandoned. These behaviors a lot of times happen from like the smallest little thing. So it could have been your friends in 3rd grade decided they didn't like something, and so they decided not to be friends with you anymore. That could, boom, abandonment wound, where now you are always looking for what other people want and trying to be what other people want. So it doesn't have to be these really big things. It can be something small, which is why those behaviors, they're nuanced and they're in our daily activities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, continue. What's the next one?
Okay.
I'm so fascinated right now.
Okay, so controller is the next one. Controller is super interesting. It has 2 dialects. The root fear is that there's going to be instability in life, and then you're not going to have your physical like survival needs met. So a lot of times with this one, think of this as it's a little bit more like primal when we look at our needs. A lot of times these individuals have a background or an experience during childhood where there were money worries, or there weren't enough things, or there was constantly this fear of there's a lack of resources. And that's really what drives them. And so the 2 dialects are what we normally think of controller, which is like the micromanager. They need to know all the information and they need to make all the decisions. They can't delegate. The other dialect is the procrastinator. So
interesting.
Yeah. So they have all the information and they kind of know where they want to go, but they're afraid of actually committing to making a decision.
Why is that?
Because the commitment is like when you're in the in-between, there's still possibilities. But when you commit to something, it could create instability.
Creates a box.
Yes. And so they're most likely they had something in their childhood where a parent or a caregiver or somebody made a decision and it turned out terribly. Okay. So then they're afraid of, oh, if I commit to this thing, then what if I'm creating instability through the commitment? And so they'll, no matter how much information they have, it's never enough. Also with controllers, these individuals have a hard time letting go of anything in particular. They feel like what if I need this? What if I need to remember this thing, the way that this person treated me? Or what if I need this t-shirt that I haven't worn in, 2 years? What if something happens and I need it? So this is also where you'll see like
hoarding.
Yes, hoarding, pack rats. A lot of times have this one.
Interesting.
And it's really people who have controller a lot of times feel it in their bodies a lot more. So it impacts the root chakra, and it can be really, really hard to trust other people, as well as it can be really, really hard to make decisions, or to like, you're almost like obsessed with having enough, but nothing ever quite feels like there's enough. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to go to the next one?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the last.
Let me stop you right there for 1 second. Cause like, I feel I'm like noticing myself and people almost in all of them, but in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is normal, right?
Yes. Oh yes. 100%. Even when I was making them, I knew like immediate people would drop in. I was like, okay, like I knew which one my mom was. I knew who my dad was. I was like, yeah.
You need an anxiety quiz on your
I do. I have one. Yeah. Don't worry. I have one. Yeah. So you guys can always, those of you who are listening, you can go online and take it. But the last one. So this is number. And this is the one where I see most men have this one. Not necessarily all, but most men. And this is just because of the dynamic of how men were taught to not embrace emotions, to not be emotional. The number, they have a core fear of themselves. So what this means is at one point in time, they learned that an emotion, a dream, a personality trait, something about themselves was a threat to their physical survival. And so they learned to shut it off and disassociate and numb it out. So these individuals, the behaviors you'll see are like, they go through seasons of like obsessing over things, or they'll pick different things to obsess over. So maybe, they're obsessed with a sports team for a couple months, and then they're obsessed with learning this new like biohacking thing. Like they make the things around them their entire personality. It's really hard for them to separate, because the reason they're doing this is so they can try to fill this gap and shrink down that part of themselves that's a threat to their physical survival. This is also where we see addiction. Yeah. This is where we see addiction. Yeah. This is in the extreme cases, because in each of these, there's kind of an extreme version of it that is where we see the diagnoses of different conditions. And so with addictions, you're able to numb out whatever that part of yourself is. Right. And there's also this, like, because there's so much of a disconnect between you and your body, it's really hard for you to feel things. Any type of emotion that you feel feels like overwhelming, even if it's just like the smallest amount. They have a really hard time regulating, and they really don't like to embrace emotions in any capacity. Like it's really hard for them. This can also turn into where we see a little bit more of people who don't feel like they have the capacity to be in relationships. They feel like they have to pull away. They even will have like, they're really into their person and then they ghost them. So you have those extremes.
Anxious avoidant.
Yes. And that's really just because
I know this. That was my entire day.
I get it. And that's really because they can't face certain parts of themselves. So anytime anything creates an emotion that is more than just kind of like neutral, it feels overwhelming. Their body reacts. That's why they will lean on external things. They're constantly trying to pull from the external to fill or shrink away that version of themselves or that piece of themselves. You also see a lot of times depression that comes from anxiety is in this one, because depression is essentially when your soul self, ego has essentially categorized your soul self as a threat to your physical survival. So it starts to try to shut it down. It starts to kind of disconnect, shrink things. Yeah. So that's a
lot. Like I feel like everyone who's listening to this right now is probably like, oh my gosh, like I know. Where do I start? So like if someone is here and they're like, I'm very curious about these behaviors that I have, that maybe it's time to heal them or all those things. Like what's the first piece of advice or a piece of advice that you
I would say start if you're sitting and you're listening and you're overwhelmed, start with your anxiety language, because it's going to give you a lot of information on just where to start looking at the root of what's going on.
Right.
So instead of going into therapy and your therapist is like, what do you want to talk about? What's going on right now? And you just list the recent problems. Knowing your anxiety language can give you the tools of like, okay, I know that if you're a pleaser, I have this core fear of abandonment. So where can I go as far back as I can to figure out where and how I was abandoned? And I always tell people, don't try to, if you can, meditate on it. Like sit with, okay, where am I feeling this? How old do I feel? Ask those kinds of questions instead of trying to use your intellectual brain of the memories that you do have. When you're unearthing the root causes, it doesn't have to make any sense. That's the number one thing I tell my clients is when we're in their sessions, I was like, these answers don't have to make any sense. We can try to make sense of them later, but I was like, just let's get to the bottom of it and then we can go from there. But if you're trying to make it make sense, you're never going to get to the depth that's actually going to create real results for you.
Right. Okay. This has been a fascinating conversation. Yeah. I can't wait to re-listen to it. Like, seriously, because I'm really fascinated by everything. You have a new program coming out.
I do. You
want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I have a 3-day live challenge. It's called the Intuitive Edge. To me, it feels like a party because I love parties. And in it, I'm going to be really teaching you guys how to unlock your intuition, and then how to use it in your everyday life so that you can create the type of blueprint and changes that get you to where you want to be, whether it's in your emotional health or your mental health, whether it's in your career or your relationships. Intuition is something that touches every single part of your life. And once you figure out what your gifts are, you're able to innovate any area of your life. If you want to have a better family relationship, if you want to change your business, these skills are all pivotal in being able to be the most authentic version of yourself out loud. And I'm also going to be doing mini readings and things like that, but you'll meet your spirit guides. There's so many different things.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah. So it's all like tactical things, and you also get a chance to see and feel what it really is like to use this in a way that helps your mental health, your physical health, not just trying to figure out the next thing. A lot of people use intuition to try to predict things. And although that's great and it has a time and place, it's the first place we should be using it is
for inner knowing.
Yes. Inner knowing and healing. Yeah.
Yes. I'm just laughing so hard because one time Jason and I were like outside. I'm like, I want to see my power animal. And he's like, what is it? Judy Garland.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
What is it? A parakeet? And now we have this joke that my power animal is a parakeet. It's not though. It's a hummingbird.
Oh
Darn
my
it.
gosh.
That's
I
everyone.
love that. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But also spirit guides. Yeah. I have many that I talk to.
Oh yeah. Everyone
every
has
day.
many.
Call them in.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people have at least 20 in my opinion.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and because there's so many spirit guides, you have to think like there's different councils for different parts of your life. And those all have different spirit guides on them, so you can tap into them depending on what area of life you want to focus on.
Now, for our religious followers who are like, what is this spirit guide thing? How would you translate it for someone who
think of it like your guardian
Christian
angels?
Guardian
so,
angels. Okay.
when especially, I mean, I know not all Christians. I was raised Catholic, so
Me too.
Yeah, yeah. So we had like Mary and the saints. So like think about it as like praying to the saints or praying to the angels. That these are souls and energies that are here to help you and here to help you heal whatever you need to heal. Stay connected with light. If you're listening, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a little bit scared. That's okay. But then start wherever you're at. So start with only talking to angels. You don't have to go in and surrender to trying to talk to some other like type of guide or animal spirit guide or whatever. Start with angels. That's okay.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll have all of that information in the show notes. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Annamarie F. Green, and that if you go there, you can also register for the 3-day live event.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the show today. This is Tracy Matthews signing off until next time. If you like this episode, make sure that you subscribe to our channel and click that little notification bell so that you are reminded every time we post new episodes. And if you loved Annamarie's episode and you want to learn more about her, check out the show notes. You can find all the links to find her right there. All right, ciao for now.